The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
We are officially past the midway point of the week. We're on the downslope. It's Thursday, everybody, I think. I never know these days. You get into the middle of the season, it doesn't matter. Especially a week like this one where there's a handful of games every day throughout the week, which, as I've said, I actually rather enjoy. I like it. It sort of evens out the amount of work that you have to do over the week. However, it does make it difficult to know where the hell we are in the week. Where are we? What is this? What day is this? What time is this? I don't know. This is Fantasy NBA Today. That I do know. A hoop ball presentation brought to you, as always, by our good friends in Hawaiian Isles, Kona Coffee Company, powering the hoop ball staff with their delightful blends of caffeinated beverage. HawaiianIsles.com is the website, at HI Kona Coffee on Twitter, or find them on Amazon by searching for Hawaiian Isles. We have a few things to go over on today's show. You're stuck with just me alone. As I mentioned, I think it was either early this week or late last week, there's going to be more solo shows here as we work on some larger projects behind the scenes, and it just means that we have to divert a little bit of our time towards other stuff. So, again, we have a wonderful stable of guests at our disposal, and we will utilize them when the time is necessary. But we're not just throwing new folks on right now, simply because time is short, and locating them takes a lot of that time, that is. So we love our guests. I don't want this to reflect on them in any way. This is entirely on the fact that I just don't have the same time I did September through December. We're starting up some new projects here as you turn the corner into the new year at Hoop Ball, and so you're going to get more of me just breaking down fantasy stuff. The shows are going to be a little bit shorter. They're going to be a little bit more focused on fantasy stuff, whether it's season long or DFS, and hopefully you guys are okay with that. A massive thank you to everyone that continues to listen to the podcast. If you're a relatively new listener and you haven't yet reviewed the show on iTunes, if you like it, please do so. We really appreciate positive reviews. And if you have constructive feedback, hit me up with that. You don't need to leave it in a review. Then it's just there in perpetuity. You can let me know on Twitter. I take all criticism, as long as it's thoughtful, I take it all in stride. You know, I'm not a super sensitive guy about that sort of stuff if it's something that you really thought through. If you felt like, for instance, I blather on a bit at the beginning of the show, someone has told me that, many someones in fact, and I've tried to shorten the opening a little bit, unless it's important stuff like today's show, where I'm sort of reminding you guys of how things are going to shake out in the podcast in the not-too-distant future. In addition, I do like to take a minute here at the beginning of the show to just set the table a little bit. What do you got coming up? What's the appetizer? What's the main course? What's on the menu for today's episode? We have a few things. We have a medium-sized Wednesday card. By all accounts, only 8 games. That's pretty small for a Wednesday, but a medium card to break down thoughts on what any of this stuff means going forward. We've got a larger than usual Thursday card to go over. We've got sports betting stuff to gloss across, as always, just to kind of keep you abreast of what we're doing over there. And we've got a big old DFS contest to review from Wednesday night. One that certainly got heated. Ratcheted up a notch, huh? A little fun with the DFS landscape. That's what we're working on as well. So we'll get into all of that over the course of today's episode, which I would venture to say will probably closer to the 40 to 45 minute range. We can just get right on into it. Wednesday evening. We'll start early, we'll work late. Orlando in Detroit lost 120 to 115 despite 6 3-pointers from Terrence Ross. And a slightly more engaged game from Jonathan Isaac. He still didn't have the defensive stats, and that's the thing that's really going to drive us crazy. But he also was stuck with Blake Griffin for long stretches during this ballgame. Aaron Gordon, I believe, opened on Blake, but there were many times where either Gordon or Vooch was not on the floor, and so Isaac shifted up to play the power forward, and he got stuck on Blake. And there was a bad matchup. Jonathan, big high-flying sort, and then Griffin just too strong for him. I Isaac, as we've talked about before, I've had to let go of him in a number of spots. There is a league where I picked him back up, where he fits my build a little bit better. It's a punt assists, punt points sometimes build as well, but mostly punt assists. And so if he can just get you a handful of rebounds, a couple of threes, and then just add the steals and blocks, that's all I need. I don't even need him to shoot. Be nice if he was engaged, but anyway, that's where we're sitting right now. As I mentioned about a week ago, Terrence Ross is getting hot again. He runs like CJ Miles, where he gets super hot for a month, and then he goes super cold for a month, and so this is the time to ride him if you want the three-pointers, and very little else. He doesn't do much else, and he usually doesn't shoot quite this well from the field. This is an overtime game, by the way, but this is a big one, and he's riding a streak of big ones right now. Detroit remains incredibly boring from a fantasy standpoint, and I don't care. Milwaukee, Memphis. This was a revenge game for Milwaukee. They were up huge, and Memphis ended up shaving some of that deficit off with garbage time guys. Omri Casspi played 36 minutes off the bench. Justin Holiday got the start, but only played 17 minutes. He actually had a marvelous line in 17 minutes. Only took 4 shots, made a three-pointer, 5 points, 4 boards, 4 steals, and 1 block. And you look at it and you're like, come on. Just let the kid play a little bit. Let him get his feet underneath him. If he's really going to start with Kyle Anderson out, I have to believe that at some point he's going to find his way to more than 17 minutes. He got into foul trouble early, so he played the first 3 minutes of the game. And I don't even remember if he got back in the second quarter, maybe for a couple minutes. So the first half, I think he played a total of like 5 or 6 minutes. Second half, he got more like 10 or 11. And that's a little closer to what you're hoping for in a half of basketball. So I would think about it at the very least. I would strongly consider it. I know that this is not, a 17-minute game is not really what we were looking for, but he doesn't need 35 minutes to do the 9-category stuff. Defensive stats, three-pointers, so on and so forth. And on the odd chance, and I have to believe that it'll happen eventually, on the odd chance that he actually warms back up again at some point, he could blitz back up the fantasy ranking chart. Remember, they traded for this dude, so there's some inclination to play him. Also, by the way, this was a blowout. I know that the final score doesn't look like it, but it was a blowout, and you can tell because of the minutes. Giannis, 21. Bledsoe, 24. Middleton, 27. Marc Gasol, 25. Mike Conley, 23. So it's tough to know what they would have done with Holiday if this was a more competitive ballgame, but Slow-Mo's out for at least a month, it seems like. That's the impression we've been getting from the whole thing. And, a month for Justin Holiday to carve himself out a role with this team, that might be a shot worth taking. I wouldn't write it off completely. Him versus Jonathan Isaac, I think I'm going Jonathan Isaac just because of the minutes. The minutes are there for Isaac, and they're not for Holiday. Yet. But it's all about stat set, and Holiday has been a stat magnet throughout his career. We're just looking for that little opening. That's all it's going to take. That little opening. 6 cash stats. 1 3, 1 block, 4 steals in only 17 minutes. That's what he does. Those 3 categories. And pretty much every league in the universe needs those 3 categories. Every team. Toronto and Boston. Nice win for the Celtics in this one. Toronto was up. Boston was able to come from behind and beat them. Despite a big game from Kawhi Leonard, he got some help. Not a ton, though. Needed a little bit more from a guy like a Kyle Lowry. Pascal Siakam slowing a tiny bit in this ballgame. Good to see Danny Green rumbling along. And then for Boston, too many mouths to feed, man. It's the same old freaking story. Kyrie Irving had a huge ballgame. Al Horford played well. And then in this odd twist, Gordon Hayward was actually okay, but Marcus Morris was not good in this ballgame. Crazy, I know. Jason Tatum was good from a popcorn standpoint, but not from an efficiency standpoint. It's tough, man. It's tough when there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They legitimately have 8 guys that they're trying to give substantial minutes to. Kyrie, obviously, you can trust. You guys know who you can trust on that team, but it's going to continue to be, at times, bumpy. Brooklyn over Houston in overtime. Another team overcoming a gigantic deficit And remarkable, frankly, that Brooklyn was able to do it. It was Spencer Dinwiddie and Jarrett Allen led the charge. Huge games from Jarrett Allen, who played 43 minutes. Dinwiddie, 32 minutes. He had 33 and 10. Massive performance from Spencer. DeMarre Carroll had 22. He gets his shots up these days, doesn't he? Rondale Ice-Jefferson made his return. He played 7 minutes, so that was fun. D'Angelo Russell had one of his slower games. Ed Davis has become an afterthought now with Jarrett Allen ramping it up here lately. And we still have no idea what's going on with Allen Crabbe. So this is probably what you got, except that, DeMarre Carroll, limited fantasy game. Points and threes. That's pretty much all he is these days. Dinwiddie had been slumping. Maybe this breaks him out of it. Hopefully you were able to buy low beforehand. D'Angelo Russell, he's due for a little bit of a regression. Joe Harris, he's pretty trustworthy these days. And that's as far as it extends. James Harden, 58, 10, and 6. He almost did it himself again. He did get a little bit of help in this ballgame, actually. P.J. Tucker playing the bulk of his minutes at center, and not surprisingly, Jarrett Allen had 20 and 24 in this ballgame. But P.J. had 20 and 10. One of his biggest games as a pro. Gerald Green had 15. Austin Rivers, 13. Eric Gordon made his return with 20 points. But now apparently has a sore knee. I actually didn't even see that injury when it happened. But apparently there's something going on with that. Yeah, he's out. He left in the fourth quarter and didn't return. So he finally came back from one thing, and now it's another. That's rough days of these, man. I know they keep saying Chris Paul still another week to 2 weeks, but if he's ready to go, they may need to get him in there. James Harden can't play these types of minutes all the time. It's crazy. 23 more free throws for him, too. If P.J. Tucker gets center eligibility, that would be pretty sweet. But I don't know that you can trust the other streaming guys. If you want three-pointers, Gerald Green will probably give you those, especially if Eric Gordon now has to miss more time again. Then these other guys, they're going to be bombing away, right? That's the only hope they've got, is to spread the floor around James Harden, because they don't have any pick-and-roll guys on this team anymore. So it's Harden ISO. If they try to double-team him, he'll throw it to a three-point shooter, and then they're going to fire. So there's a very real chance that Gerald Green averages 3 to 4 three-pointers a game if Eric Gordon is out going forward. San Antonio with a come-from-behind victory over the Dallas Mavericks, which ruined one of our revenge plays, and that's why I said it with such rage in my voice. I was hoping Dallas would hang on and win this thing. Jakob Poeltl actually got 20 minutes in this ballgame, and he was productive in them. The bench brought him back into the game, and it's why you see this sort of flipped on its head statistics. DeMar DeRozan had 14 and 9 in a sort of pedestrian game. Rudy Gay made his return from injury and had 14 and 4. Efficiency, that's what you look for out of Rudy, and he did get that tonight. LaMarcus Aldridge had one of his worst games of the year. Derek White just never really got involved in this one in sort of a weird... Dallas outplayed the starters, and then guys like Bertans, Bellinelli, Patty Mills, Jakob Poeltl, these guys came in and dunked on him. So I don't think you make any adds or drops based on this ball game. This is one of those instances where a couple of different guys got it going, and so the coach rolled with it. It's sort of a tried and true method. I don't want to say it's Spoelstra, Ian, but it is a little bit, right? Pop's always done it first. He has this short leash with guys. But this was less about the short leash than just to say, because DeMar still played 39 minutes. It was just, who's playing well? Who's got the team in a position to make the comeback win? And he rolled with it, and it worked. You have to understand when to do that stuff. I could go on a massive Miami Heat rant right now, but I think I'm going to try to stay mellow for my own mental well-being here. Nah, screw it. Let's go nuts. The thing about the Miami Heat that drives me totally crazy is that they don't... There's never the... What's the word I'm looking for? There's never the stick-with-itness, where with Spoelstra, if one of his starters isn't doing something, he'll yank them, and then he'll never put them back in, almost regardless of what happens. There's a certain measure with this Spurs team, and under Popovich, I think he has a much better feel for when to rotate between the guys on the floor, when really is the time to just let the bench keep going. Where with Spoelstra, if the bench isn't doing anything special, there are a lot of times where he's just like, whatever, they're hanging in there. We'll just let it ride. It's a weird move. A very strange move. Wanted to make brief mention of a Maverick for arguably the first time on this podcast. They've been a very, not boring necessarily, because Luka Doncic is having an amazing season. And, DeAndre Jordan's been decent. And Harrison Barnes has generally been the same old snoozer of a Harrison Barnes, but a fantasy value, a guy that should be on your team. We haven't really talked about the Mavericks at all since very early on in the season, but I wanted to give a shout out to Maxi Kleber, who I mentioned, I think 2 days ago on the podcast, this guy I had one eye on for his increased playing time. So there are still question marks here, and the biggest one is how much of this is tied to Dennis Smith Jr.'s absence, which I know you're thinking to yourself, what? Maxi Kleber's 6'10". Dennis Smith Jr. is their point guard. How does that even... Well, what Dallas has done with DSJ out is they've eliminated a traditional point guard. Doncic is playing the point at his gigantic size, and they've just gone giant. They've gone huge. So Doncic at point, and then you actually almost get a tiny bit smaller. You go to Wesley Matthews, the shooting guard. Harrison Barnes is the small forward. Kleber is the power forward, and DeAndre Jordan is the center. So when DSJ comes back, that may push everybody up a slot, or at the very least, move Doncic to the small forward and Barnes to the power forward, and then Kleber comes off the bench again. So a lot of these extra minutes for Maxi might, believe it or not, be coming because of DSJ's absence. That being said, he's looked really good when he gets starters level minutes. He's absolutely a fantasy guy and a 9-cat, a fantastic 9-cat dude in starters minutes. He played 28 minutes last night, 7 points, 4 steals, a block, 2 3-pointers. Usually he'll grab a couple extra rebounds, but they're just, oddly, there weren't that many rebounds to grab in this ball game. Doncic had 8, Barnes had 8, and then when you factor in DeAndre Jordan, there wasn't much left over. But for Kleber, he's usually a little bit closer to the rim. He'll usually, if he plays this long, fall into 5 or 6 rebounds. He's a guy I picked up in one spot just to see how this thing plays out. If we get word that DSJ is back for the Mavericks' next ball game, I'm probably leaving Kleber on the bench just to see what shakes out. They play again on Saturday, so there's a couple of days off here. And if he ends up moving back to the bench, then I don't know that I can trust him. His bench role has been iffy at best. It's hovering anywhere between 5 and 20 minutes. That's too much inconsistency there. As a starter, he's 24 to 34 minutes. That's been his window, and that's been awesome because he blocks shots, he gets steals, he knocks down threes, he even grabs rebounds. Outstanding 9-cat guy when he's starting. The question mark, again, DSJ. We got to wait and find out how that is. If DSJ's still out and it's been a back or an illness or whatever, it's been something almost every time out for Dennis Smith. If he misses another game and you find out Maxi's starting, you throw him into your lineup for sure. I wouldn't hesitate even the tiniest bit. Dallas is playing a good defense, Indiana, so it's not like he's going to pop off, but he's not a big scoring guy anyway. That's not what you're shooting for with Maxi. They have a really tough schedule here. Golden State, San Antonio, Indiana, Milwaukee. Woof. Tough 4-game stretch. Portland, Cleveland, there's never anything to learn from these two teams. Jake Layman had a slightly better ball game again. He's been starting, and Evan Turner's been generally coming off the bench, but they're going with more of a hot hand situation. And otherwise, it's the same usual guys. And with Cleveland, they all suck. Tristan Thompson will get you a bunch of rebounds on a night-to-night basis, but they all suck, so what's the point there? And then New Orleans, Golden State. This was Golden State, second leg of a back-to-back from Denver. Nice to see Niko Mirotic get hot. His minutes haven't fully ramped up yet, but the shot's starting to come around. He's shaking the rust off, and then everything else is as you'd expect. These late games were not all that interesting. And then Utah and the Clippers, same kind of thing. The last 3 games on this Wednesday night are 6 teams that really we didn't have on our fantasy watch lists. It's been Donovan Mitchell playing well with all of the point guards out. Generally, Smokin' Joe has been playing better. He was a little bit slower in this ball game. And then with the Clippers, there's just sort of been nothing. We've had like one half eye on Gilgeous-Alexander to see if at any point he's going to wake up during this weird foggy dream he's floating through. But it hasn't happened yet. He's been rookified. They've got the book on him, and teams sort of understand how they want to guard the kid. And now he's got to make the adjustment, find a way to get the energy level back up, and find a way to be a bit more competitive. From a sports betting standpoint, which is always a fun measure of our success, the Dallas Mavericks, as I already said, were a team that I was really hoping was going to hang on to that ball game. Brooklyn, in their revenge game, coming from behind to beat Houston in overtime. Milwaukee avenging a home loss to the Memphis Grizzlies by beating Memphis on the road. And we got ourselves a push. A push. The sports betting community has really unsavory names for the push. They're not podcast friendly. I don't feel quite so similar. I mean, this is one where we were sweating it out until the very last second. It was generally the line was Warriors by 7. I know a few places were able to, one of our pros here at Hoop Ball, Zach Feldman, was able to locate a 7.5. It's why those little half points really make a big difference. Get the best line, people, if you can. It's not easy tracking down the best line, but if you have a few different outlets where you could potentially, put $100 a piece or something like that just to play around with, those little half points, they add up in a big, big way. I forget the exact calculation because it's been a long time since I was fully immersed in the sports betting universe. I mean, obviously, I'm doing it for you guys here on this podcast, and we're doing more than dabbling. We're doing research projects here, but it's not the 7-8 hours of handicapping a day that I was doing back in my time at pregame. A point, you can do the math based on basically what a sports book is offering you. Generally, it'll cost you a little bit to buy a point or a half point or whatever it might be. So, go to your sports book and see what it would cost you. Just like if it's online, click on the button. If it's a person, see what's the pay going to be. If you're buying a half point, that'll usually cost you about $10. And we're talking about a $100 bet. We'll use the general 110 to win 100, the VIG situation. So in basketball, buying a point is worth about $20. How does that correspond to the money line, right? We can do this description as well. A team that's a minus 130 money line team is about a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. A 2-point favorite is about minus 140. This, by the way, here's where we're tying it all back in right now. As of this exact moment in time, and this will change. I'm not going to say it could change. It will change. There have been 245 revenge plays to this point in the season. 245. I have to admit, when I started getting into this thing, I didn't think it was going to require this much work. But here we are. And over those 245 plays to this point, combined, this is the sum. So you can use a big old sigma on that bad boy. The sum of all of the results against the spread is 621.5 in the positive direction, meaning you have won by a combined 621.5 points against the spread over 245 plays. That averages out to 2.58 points per game against the spread. What we have found so far, and again, a lot of time left for this thing to level off. This is a high point, right? Because things have been going really well lately. We're on the revenge games. I'm going to say we because they're tracking this stuff, but I'm betting it. So whoever's out there doing it, it's been running hot. It's been running real hot. It's up about 10 units over the last week alone. So this is a high water point. Prior to that, it was about 2.1, 2.2, something like that, I think. So it's jumped significantly over this hot stretch. Whatever it happens to level off at, whether it's 1.5 or lower or higher or 2.58, which is where it's at right now, which I think will be one of the higher marks we hit the rest of the year on this. What we've now found to this point, again, 2.58, Assume that at this moment, what I'm telling you is that this angle has produced 2.58 points of value against the spread. A team that's a 2.5-point favorite is generally about a minus 145 or minus 150 money line favorite. And it doesn't always perfectly correspond. This is a rough estimate. But I just told you that that's the same as buying about 2 points. And it's hitting at a crazy clip. So 2 points, I don't have the exact breakdown, by the way. I managed to track it in plus ones and minus 1.1, so I don't have the exact win-loss percentage to this point. But what we found right now is that you're basically getting a minus 150 money line for free with this angle. You're paying the normal price for a team that you should be paying minus 150 for. That's a huge deal. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to figure out the exact breakdown right now because it's important for this discussion. Okay, I had to pause the recording for that one because it took a couple of minutes of mathematics. 245 plays, 6 of them are pushes. This is like Algebra 1 here. 245 plays, 6 pushes, and we are up 33.2 units overall. So basically it's X minus Y equals 33.2, where X is some portion of 239, because you have to pull the 6 pushes out of there. And Y is... It would be 239 minus X times 1.1. Got that? So I ran that number, and mostly I guessed a little bit because I could figure out what was close, and then you can swing it 2.1 units every time you switch a loss to a win or vice versa. So it ends up being 141 and 98 with 6 pushes. 141 and 98 in those plays so far with 6 pushes. That's hitting at a clip of 59%. Almost on the nose. It's 58.995. So we'll round up to 59%. You only need to hit 52.4% long-term to win. And a 2.5 whatever, what did I say, 2.58, 2.59 points of value against the spread has produced to us, to this point, a winning clip of very close to 60%. Colossal. We'll keep tracking it, though. I mean, obviously, I don't think anything ever really hits close to 60%. That's crazy. So this should level off a little bit. But again, as long as we stay above 52.4, we're in business. And then, of course, taking a look towards tomorrow, the medium-sized Thursday card. That's always fun to say. We got 6, man. That's not bad. Sometimes you get stuck with just 2 games on a Thursday. We got 6 of them. The Knicks are playing Washington. That game is in London. And the expectation there is that the mighty Mitch Robinson will make his return for the New York Knicks. This is intriguing. And I've taken heat for my love for Mitchell Robinson. And he was a guy that I sent off to the waiver wire and almost didn't get picked up anywhere because why would he? Dude was hurt. Who cared, right? Nobody was picking him up. We didn't know how long he was going to be out. He ended up being out for a pretty significant amount of time. And now he's coming back in a better situation than one he left behind. Remember, when he got hurt, he was fighting with Enes Kanter for minutes. That's not easy. Now he's fighting with Luke Cornett. That's a battle that he can win, and a battle that's basically made for him to play at least as many minutes as he can before fouling out. If you need blocks and field goal percentage, I think you take a flyer on him. I think you pick up Mitchell Robinson. His minutes are not going to be that high his first game back. Remember, he's missed a lot of time here with 2 separate injuries. He had one, and then he aggravated the other. So it's not going to be simple in his comeback. He's probably going to play, I don't know, 10, 12 minutes in this ball game would be my guess. Maybe like 4 3-minute stints or 4 4-minute stints. 16, I think, would be the high side for him. Might be 2 5-minute stints for all we know. But in 10 minutes, he could get you 2 blocked shots, or 3 even, if things are going crazy for him. You know, if Washington's getting silly, taking it to the rim, and he's just flying around blocking things. So, there's definitely one spot. I told you already about my point assists team. I'm grabbing him for sure. I was sitting on, who the hell did I have on that team? I was sitting on Ed Davis, just grabbing rebounds and waiting for my injured guys to come back Rob Covington, Kent Bazemore, Jonas Valanciunas. So I'm playing around, man. It's not the house's money necessarily, but I guess I see no long-term use for a guy like Ed Davis, so throw him to the scrap heap, pick up Mitchell Robinson, and see what happens. I've got another league where I could desperately use those blocks, but he's actually already taken, the son of a gun. The one league where he's in, and that's the one where I need blocked shots. There's one league where I don't need him at all. I have JaVale McGee and Miles Turner, and of course he's completely available in that league. No problem at all. Just come on down. I don't need him. I do like the outlook, though, because we're now exactly 3 weeks away from the All-Star break, which is crazy and awesome all at the same time. I'm super excited. We're going to have our live show again this year, and we'll start teasing that soon. Not yet, but soon. 3 weeks away from the All-Star break. We're right in that window where if you want to stash a guy, you have to start to ask yourself every day, is someone else in my league thinking about this same guy? Even as far back as a week ago, you didn't have to do that. But now you're starting to hear it. The little rumors coming out. The Cantor to the Kings rumor. The Hawks shopping Bazemore and Dedmon rumors. And Jeremy Lin. And I'm sure there will be another one in the next couple of days. And all that does, even if none of those things play themselves out in the next 10 days or whatever you would call soon in your mind, what it does is plants the seed in everybody in your league's mind that the trade deadline isn't far away anymore. And it's not. It's a psychological thing, completely. It's completely a psychological thing because there really isn't any difference between 2 days ago and today. Stashing a guy for one extra game is pittance. It's nothing. It's negligible. But those little rumors flowing out, the tweets that come out from the beat writers and the fantasy web pages that just say so-and-so is being shopped, people start to think about the trade deadline. It's why on yesterday's podcast, I said, hey, if you're thinking about stashing centers right now, let's start, you start looking at the different guys that are out there. Alex Len is a potential massive stash. And he's been a massive stash for years. Remember, he was playing behind Tyson Chandler for his entire career. And Phoenix never cut Chandler until finally this year, and Len's not even there to enjoy the fruits of that labor anymore. Now he's behind Dwayne Dedmon, who we know Atlanta's trying to shop and who should have a great market. He's an expiring contract, so a team doesn't have to pick up any salary beyond the rest of this year. He's probably going to cost somebody a second rounder. Maybe Atlanta could squeeze a first if a team really thinks they've got a shot and wants to get up and over the hump. I don't know. But I have some small measure of confidence that he's going to get moved. I hope. And the beauty of a guy like Alex Len is that, yes, obviously he's been seeing gigantic minutes with Dwayne Dedmon out right now. But even when Dedmon comes back, Len was still playing 18 to 22 minutes as the backup. So he, to me, is an interesting stash because he's not posting zeros right now. He's getting you small nuggets of fantasy value. He's playing 17 minutes and he's going for, 8 and 6 with a block or something like that, which is annoying. It's not much of a line, and he's a bad foul shooter, so he could drag you down a little bit in that regard, and he turns the ball over too much for a guy doing what he's supposed to do. But there's upside. There's top 90 upside, I would say, if somebody gets shifted and he moves into a 28 to 30-minute role, which he would. Omari Spellman's body won't hold that many minutes on the court for long periods of time. Maybe a week, but not the rest of the year. So you start to think about these stash guys a little bit. We were talking about Mitchell Robinson, and that's how we got into this discussion, so we'll loop it right back around to him. Enes Kanter is almost definitely gone from New York, even if it's a buyout. I can't see him finishing the season with the Knicks on the court. I mean, the only thing that could happen there that would, he could still stay a member of the New York Knicks and just watch the games happen. That's a very reasonable thing that could take place. He could end up just viewing the games from the bench and coaching up Mitchell Robinson and Luke Cornett. And then when you watch this team, you have to try to put yourself in the head of what New York wants to do. Number one, they want to tank. So They don't want their guy on the floor in Cantor that actually can go rebound and move people around a little bit. They want to let their young guys go biff it on the court. And if that means Mitchell Robinson fouling out in 14 minutes, so be it. My guess is they're going to end up having Robinson and Cornette split the center minutes, and it'll be a little bit of a hot hand thing, like a 28-20, 24-24, 26-22 kind of thing most nights. And in 20 or more minutes, Mitchell Robinson can very easily be a fantasy asset. I mean, it's not a question in almost any respect. He was averaging 17 minutes a game before he got hurt, and he was already inside the top 140 in 9-cat leagues because he was averaging 2.5 defensive stats a game in that limited amount of time. So if he can even increase that by another third, forget a third, how about a quarter? 4 more minutes on top of that. Add a quarter to everything he's doing. That's wild stuff, man. That's another, 0.45 blocks per game, 2.3 blocks per game, and a steal. 3 and change defensive stats together. 64% dunking. That's it. And 5 and change rebounds. So they call it 5.25. Maybe better as he starts to fill out a little bit and maybe improves and maybe doesn't pick up fouls as fast. Absolutely, that's a guy you could stash, but you have to be willing to sit on these guys for a little bit as well. You have to be okay with the idea that it might take a guy like Mitchell Robinson 2 to 3 weeks to move into his value. What are you going to do with him over that stretch? Can you weather that storm? Alex Len, can you weather the storm until Dwayne Dedmon is out more permanently? And he might miss games between now and then, so there might even be some big ones for Alex in the short term. But we're at that time in the year where you have to start thinking about whether or not the other people on your team are going to stash the guys before you do. And don't go stash crazy. Don't pick up 2 or 3 different stash guys because a lot of trades just don't happen. You have to go with the really high probability stuff, and with the lower probability stuff, you read and react, and you move from there. And hell, if you're watching our live show on trade deadline morning, then you can just let us react, and you can just listen and do whatever we tell you to do. How the hell did we get on this? Yes, we were looking ahead. We were looking at the the card for tonight. That was New York and Washington. By the way, this is a revenge game for the Knicks. Might even be a double revenge if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, they've lost to Washington twice this year, and only catching 7 because it's a neutral site game. Well, we'll be tracking it regardless. Fantasy standpoint, you heard about the New York side. Washington side, obviously, we'll be watching guys like Thomas Bryant to see how many minutes he gets, how Satoransky looks. He's been a little bit up and down, but generally he's been solid. Bradley Beal's been crazy. What is Jeff Green going to keep doing? He's been seeing some time at the 5. Will he do likewise in this one? I mean, with no Enes Kanter, he's not traveling for this game because he's fearing for his life, which very real stuff going on, and we're talking about fantasy sports. Seems like Jeff Green should be able to control a guy like Luke Cornette pretty easily. Mitchell Robinson would give him some trouble just because of the high-flying nature, but he's not that strong yet, so you might see some Green at the 5 as well. And I'm curious to see how many minutes these guys get in a regulation 48-minute game. Wizards have been playing a lot of overtimes. Sacramento, Charlotte. Charlotte just lost to Sacramento 2 games back this week. That was the second half of the Hornets back-to-back when they got blown out in Southern California. They went up to Sacramento and were able to kind of hang in there a little bit, so I wonder if they'll have a little revenge on the brain now they've had a couple days to rest up, get ready for this ball game. Fantasy-wise, nothing. We're just waiting on Cody Zeller. That's really the only story on the Charlotte side of things. Philly, Indiana, not a revenge game. Interesting twist. There seems like there's something going on from a betting perspective in every ball game. It's that time of the year, I should say. This is when a lot of things, it's the dog days. It's when all the betting stuff comes together, at least for my stuff. Philly is coming off a giant win over the Minnesota Timberwolves. This game is going to be a little bit tougher than the last one. This will be a little bit more of a challenge against a nice team like Indiana. Fantasy stuff, not really much going on there. They got Miles Turner back. Darren Collison officially off the injury report, so we don't have to worry about him missing a game. He didn't. And he's been playing better. He's settled in nicely. Same with Thad Young. Indiana's finally... It took him really until December for everybody to sort of settle in a little bit, but it's finally happened, and thank goodness for that, because it was annoying. Philly, I'd love to see Jimmy Butler exert himself a little bit more. Assert himself a little bit more. Just, he's been a pain. He's still a buy low. There's no question about it. Eventually he's going to be angry Jimmy, and he's not going to be content with this role that he has right now. He's going to want to take more shots. He's going to want to be more involved in the offense. It just hasn't been enough. Now he's not getting the rebounds he was getting elsewhere. He's not getting the assists. He's not shooting that many threes. Maybe that last game will wake him up a little bit. Shooting percentage is still good for him. He's going to get pretty open looks with this team, but he just looks a little out of place at times. Phoenix, Toronto, the continuing discussion of what exactly is Phoenix doing on a night-to-night basis when they have these incredible guys that they probably should play more, but at the same time, they don't really want to win. They don't truly want to win. They want to be competitive, teach the guys how to compete, how to play right, how to play some good basketball on a night-to-night basis. But at the same time, they'd rather take the L at the end of the day. So we shall see in this one. I'm intrigued. Toronto comes home off a tough game in Boston. This is a revenge game for Phoenix. They're also coming off getting blown the heck out in their last ball game. Phoenix got manhandled in their last one. So a couple of angles pointing towards the Suns. They should be catching a truckload of points, even with Toronto on the back-to-back. Something to keep in mind from a fantasy standpoint as well. Devin Booker, as he ramps himself back up to full tilt, what does that mean for guys like DeAnthony Melton? We already saw Josh Jackson has vanished into the abyss. Chicago, Denver. We were sort of sweating out the Wendell Carter Jr. stuff. It all happened and then went away in the span of like 6 hours on Wednesday afternoon, where he was diagnosed with a thumb injury. The MRI then first suggested that he might be out for 6 weeks, and then later they realized, oh no, there's no tear, it's just a bruise, and he could play within the next couple of ball games. So I don't know what the hell's going on with the Bulls these days. They're atrocious to watch, but they also are on revenge. This is a close loss, believe it or not. They suffered to the Nuggets at their place. This is a game where Denver might get themselves caught looking ahead, but at the same time, Denver just got whomped by Golden State in their last game. So they're going to come out with a little bit of a purpose. Bobby Portis should see more time with Wendell Carter Jr. out. I don't know how long that's going to be. If Bobby Portis can actually just get and stay healthy for a couple of weeks, he should be able to settle into whatever role he's going to have, and then maybe we might have an idea of what that means. Horrible team to watch play. Jim Boylan has turned them into an excruciatingly boring NBA team. It's really sad, honestly. It's really sad. They just walk it up. They've got all these unbelievably talented players, and they don't use any of them at all. Yeah, walk it up. Get the rebound, walk it up. Don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. Just walk it up. Don't let anybody have any fun. He's the fun police. Jim Boylan is the fun police, and the Bulls front office loves it. I don't... Whatever, it doesn't matter. From a fantasy standpoint, it sucks because it's put a massive damper on guys like Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, Lauri Markkanen. Just let them get out and have a little fun. And nobody's stepped into that void at small forward, and I don't think anybody will. Oh, well. Last game on this Thursday docket, Lakers and Oklahoma City. You know what I'm saying about this one. I'm not chasing the Lakers, Thunder. I'm just waiting to see what's going on with Nerlens Noel. Sounds like he was actually messing around on the court a little bit. Means he's feeling better. We haven't heard anything about him being activated any day soon, but kind of a scary head injury. Good to see him getting back and at least getting within the neighborhood of playing basketball again. No revenge on that one. The Chicago, by the way, that Chicago-Denver game, just to dial it back one ball game again, because Chicago is on revenge and Denver is on the 30-point bounce back, competing angles would suggest you don't play that game at all. I'll be tracking both, right? Because we want to know what the numbers mean at the end of the year, if one has more power than the other, per se. But I wouldn't dare put a cent on that ball game. So that leaves Phoenix on a revenge game. Charlotte and New York are your three teams that have a revenge situation going on. And then Phoenix also has the 30-point bounce back sitting on their side as well. I wouldn't suggest doing anything double size, but there are two things pointed in that direction. But anything can happen. Anything can happen. So that'll about do it, I think, for us on this Thursday pod. As I mentioned, it would be a little bit on the shorter side. Not that interesting of a Wednesday card. Opportunity to talk a little bit about stash stuff with Mitchell Robinson coming back. Did briefly want to talk about the DFS results, but I don't want to break them down until next week when Micah Patrick can tell me again all the things I did wrong. I swear, man, I'm treading water. I think people that are playing in this are either getting better or just like are better. And even if I'm improving, it's so little it doesn't matter. Yes, the sad truth. Starting to get down on myself. I'll pick it up. One of these times I'll actually get in there. And frankly, I don't care. I'll give you guys my money. It's just fun to watch this thing grow. We had 95 teams and it didn't quite fill up. Got really close. Thank you again to everybody that's been participating in these contests. I hope they're fun for you guys as well. Obviously, winning is fun, and I'd like that to be part of the mix for myself. But more than that, I'd like it to be part of the mix for you guys. That's more important. So hopefully you guys are enjoying yourselves, and we'll hopefully hit that 100 mark next time. If we cap out, if we max the 100, and then we can go to DraftKings and we can tell them to make it bigger for the next one. We go to 125 or 150, that means more prizes. And, of course, congratulations to the teams that won the Hoop Ball t-shirt and the teams that won the Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee prize. Our buddies giving out the second place prize. There were some huge fantasy games. Basically, if you had anybody on the nets besides D'Angelo Russell, you were in business. And, of course, which net was on my team? D'Angelo Russell. You should learn, Dan, you stupid idiot. Don't take the guy from the Lakers that you never liked to begin with. Never learn. You never learn. I had Omri Casspi. That was a great one. Outstanding grab. Obviously, Harden. Terrence Ross was a good one. I had some good ones in there, and then I also had some big wet duds. Womp womp. Don't pity me. Friday show. Last show of the week coming up tomorrow. Aaron Brewski live on the pod. We'll be going Friday afternoon Pacific time live on YouTube. Old-fashioned question and answer session. We'll talk about the topics of the week, and then if you guys have any stuff you want to throw into the YouTube chat room, we will take and answer those questions for you tomorrow afternoon. That show will likely be around, I would guess, 2 or so Pacific time, although it may get moved a tiny bit later. We'll see. We shall see. Aaron and I got to get together and make sure we pick the right start time. Of course, if you're listening on the traditional channels and you don't have time to get on YouTube, we will, of course, put out the canned version. We'll take that whole thing. We'll put it on the podcast channels. You guys know the drill. And that'll wrap up the week for us here on Fantasy NBA Today. Thanks so much for listening again, everybody. As I mentioned, if you have a moment, please do rate and review the podcast. I haven't asked you to do that in a while. And if you haven't subscribed already, do that. Hell, grab somebody else's phone and subscribe and rate and review the show. I'm not kidding. All this stuff helps as we continue to push forward. Thank you to all the people that have tried out our in-season premium package. Again, with a coupon code right now. Although I think maybe that early month deal may have run out. So I'll let you guys know when the next deal is going. If you want to try it now, it's gone up a couple of bucks. You can still bug me on Twitter for a coupon code as well. So no reason not to. And you still can get about 3 months worth of premium goodies coming your way. And then this podcast will remain free always. And that's why I ask you guys to rate and review it. Again, Dan Besbris, Fantasy NBA Today. Hoop Ball presentation, Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. You guys know the drill. Go check out all of our cool stuff going on. Follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris if you haven't already. Ooh, forgot to mention, I will be doing an AMA at Reddit at 1 o'clock this afternoon Pacific time. So if you have some questions you want to get at me, head on over to the Fantasy Basketball subreddit. It's Fantasy B-Ball, and I'll be hosting an AMA. Pretty cool. That makes me feel important. Thank you to Reddit for letting me do that. It's an honor. Honestly, I didn't think this would happen ever, certainly not this soon, and super cool that that's going on. So I'll be doing that this afternoon again around 1 p.m. Pacific time. If you guys have some questions, you can hit me up there, or you can just come say hi. You don't need to have Twitter, Reddit's very easy. You just have an account and you can just surf through. Again, it's Fantasy B-Ball is the subreddit you'd head to there. Okay, I think that's it now. Stop, think, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Even if I was, I'll just tweet about it. We'll keep tracking the gambling stuff. We'll keep an eye on all of that. Those goodies, we're still hanging around our top mark of the year in revenge games. Remarkable stuff continues to happen. I don't know what else to say on that front. it's just amazing. I almost can't believe my eyes every time it pops up. I think we're up. What are we up now? Pull up the Excel spreadsheet while I'm looking at it. I think we're up like 34 units. And it's on a crazy run. 16-5 over the last 5 days. That's just unreal. That's just unreal. Wish I was putting more money on it. But don't increase your bet now, guys. All of these things happen in waves. You go up, you go down. You just want it at the end. Your best fit line. Your best fit line's got to be a positive. And it is. But just think about it from this perspective. If you were betting these revenge angles towards the middle of November, beginning of December, when it went on a furious run and went from up like 6 units to up 21 units, that would have been great. But if at that point you were like, oh man, I'm kicking butt, I'm going to increase my bet, well, then it peeled back by 2 or 3 units before starting to move forward again. So it's got to be standardized, especially while we're continuing to figure out what the heck's going on. Standardized. Walk with me through this thing. Okay, officially now. Thanks for listening. Thursday show in the books. Enjoy the games tonight. Bigger Thursday card than usual. We'll talk to you tomorrow live on YouTube or here, recorded on the pod. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.